Hello, my name's John O'Connor. I'm from Arkansas Tech University. The title of this presentation is Exploring Adapted Physical Education in Cameroon, One School's Quest. The purpose of this project was to explore the feasibility of sending teacher education majors and faculty to Cameroon to work in an English-speaking school so that our students would have more experience teaching diverse populations. They would have international experience, they would have experience with students with disabilities, they would have experience teaching in impoverished settings. It would just be a much broader experience than they get in our small town of Russellville, Arkansas. The topics I'd like to cover today include a little bit about my background, some of the expectations, some of what I thought I would see as I encountered the school in Cameroon. Uh, I'd like to talk a little bit about what the, the people at the school thought could happen, would happen, what they hope will happen. Uh, I'd like to describe some of the things that I found, good, bad, and otherwise. Um, I'd like to make some suggestions, some ideas. I'd like to share some feelings about um, where a school like this can start to grow, can start to build, its strengths and its weaknesses. And then I'd like to share some ideas about how we anticipate this school moving forward and how any of this relates to adapted physical education in the United States. To start with, my background is teaching adapted physical education in Louisiana in the public schools. I taught adapted for 7 years. Um, I taught special education in a severe profound classroom for 2 years. And I've taught adapted physical education at university setting for 16 years. I've taught in a variety of different states, different programs. Um, why Cameroon? How did we get drawn to Cameroon? Uh, the school has a relationship with the individual who established the academy in Cameroon. Previously, he had been a student at Arkansas Tech University, studying business. He became impressed with the programming that we have at Tech. He became friends with several of the faculty members, several of the students. And when he returned to Cameroon after his studies, he maintained those ties. And so he had an opportunity when he developed his school in Cameroon to reach back to Arkansas Tech because he was familiar with the program, with the university. He was familiar with the quality of education, and he felt that reaching back to our College of Education, we would be able to help to offer suggestions, ideas, online learning, resources, and it eventually evolved into this sending an educator over to Cameroon to look at the program, to talk to the teachers, talk to parents, talk to administrators, and find out what they need, what they want, what they have, and then come back to the university and report on the feasibility of working with these individuals on a long-term basis. Um, my expectations in going to Cameroon were absolutely a blank slate. I knew nothing about Cameroon. I've never been to Africa. Um, I grew up a military brat, so I've been to Europe, I've been to Asia, I've been all over the United States. I'm familiar with different cultures, moving from place to place, meeting new people, interacting with different cultural experiences, and I'm open to that. But I've never been to Africa. I've never been to the African continent. I had no idea what I was going into as I traveled to Cameroon. So I started with a research approach just to see what the databases said about Cameroon, about education in Cameroon, about special education in Cameroon. about physical education in Cameroon. And as the slide indicates, there was a tremendous shortage of resources. Uh, a search for Cameroon in special education yielded 5 hits. Um, Two of them I put on the board here, or on the slide just to share. I will provide a reference list, a kind of a resource list in the folder on Google for anybody that's interested, detailing exactly what it is I found and where I was able to dig some articles out. Um, Cameroon in physical education had even less hits, which makes sense since it's more specific than general education. Um, but it was focusing on the relationship of sports with physical education and how it impacts the individual's sense of self. Cameroon in teacher education had a little bit more information than the other two, but still it was small compared to what might be available if you did a search for a country in Europe or a state in the United States with education. There'd be much more hits. So clearly there's not enough research, there's not enough professional literature related to Cameroon. And so that makes this effort that we have um, a legitimate effort. Aside from helping a single school, there is a need to expand the body of knowledge in this direction. The hope, as I got to the school, as I arrived at the facility, um, the school had the school as an entity had its hope. They knew what they wanted. The parents that I met had a hope. The faculty had a hope. Um, the administrators had a hope. I was viewing what I thought might be possible at the school, and so really the initial meeting was kind of discovering what all of these different perspectives were. Um, I met the students. It's a school that works with children in kindergarten through 6th grade. They are this year, currently 2020, uh, trying to start a 7th and 8th grade in a separate facility, but under the same umbrella of the school. So it is trying to grow. Uh, the headmaster of the school, the founder of the school, reports that um, in the K6 program, he had 80 students. Um, Roughly a third of them have some type of disability. So it's a wide swath of children. Socioeconomically, it is both middle class and lower socioeconomic students because a third of the students are attending the academy on scholarship. They can't afford the tuition, and so the school provides a scholarship for them. Uh, and that's to bring a wider group and more diverse group of students together. Um, the program itself is purely academic. There is a day of physical activity, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. They have a Friday where they do some physical activity, but there is no structured physical education program. There is no individual identified as a physical education teacher. There is um, there is no attempt at providing adapted physical education instruction in any way. There's no attempt at physical therapy. There is one um, paraprofessional who does some speech therapy activities with some of the children, and she attempts to do some occupational therapy type activities. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Um, I arrived at the school at a time that largely by coincidence the school was conducting a an IEP for a student that was um, planning to come to the school. It was a young lady uh, with autism, and the parents wanted to meet with me, wanted to talk with me because of my background working with children with autism. And so I had an opportunity to sit with them for an hour and a half and talk to them, answer their questions, and ask them questions about their experiences in Cameroon and their daughter with autism. Um, the assistant principal served as a translator and helped me out a little bit. French is the um, official language of Cameroon, but many, if not most, people speak English to some degree, and both of these parents did. Where they couldn't understand me or I couldn't understand them, uh, we used the translator to try to get the points across. To summarize the interview, I would relate this experience. Um, the point that caught me most and that I think really encapsulates a lot of what I found in this school is that the parents, when I asked them what their goals were, what they hoped, what their aspirations were in working with their daughter in providing education for their daughter. She would have been going into probably third or fourth grade, but this was the first time she'd ever been to school. They'd never sent her to school previously. Um, the parents said their goal was that she develop some language skills, communication skills, um, and they wanted to know when she would be cured of her autism. And that is the understanding of disability, um, as far as I could see it in that area. I won't speak and say it's the entire country. I certainly won't speak about the entire continent. Um, But to the parents that I did talk to, it was very much the idea that a disability would be cured. And so that's an issue, certainly. Um, what I found in Douala, Cameroon, uh, I was there for about a week and I got to visit some different places. I got to visit the school. I saw each of the different classes, each of the different grades. I was allowed to observe some of the teachers, and some of the things they did were absolutely amazing lessons. Uh, Douala, Cameroon, if you can see the map, is a fairly large city. The population is around 2 million people. It is the largest city in Cameroon. It is not the capital city. The capital city is Yaoundé, which is approximately 90 miles away. Uh, but just to give you perspective, um, Douala sits on the west coast of Africa. Yaoundé sits a little more towards the middle of Africa, um, 90 miles away, as I said, or approximately 90 miles. To drive from Douala to Yaoundé is a 4 hour car ride. And that is considered to be a reasonable trip along basically good roads. If you get off of a main road like that, things slow to a crawl. Lots of dirt roads, lots of really regressed um, development, poor engineering, things like that. It's a low socioeconomic setting. Um, the school I was visiting is called Ray of Hope Academy. It was established by the gentleman that set it up to provide educational experience for his son. His son has autism. They found out that around 2 or 3 years of age, the child was diagnosed with autism. The child received his diagnosis of autism in the United States, in Georgia. He did not receive that diagnosis in Cameroon. I asked the parents of the young lady that was being interviewed, that was receiving the IEP, who diagnosed her with autism. And I never really got a solid answer. And so I'm not exactly sure of what the process is or how it works as far as identifying a child with a disability. Uh, that was a little ambiguous. I could never really get okay, these are the steps that we went through. So that certainly, I think, speaks about the culture of disability in that area. Um, Talking to the administration and faculty, they are extraordinarily highly motivated individuals who are going out of their way to provide the very best education they can for these children in any way that they can. And these are individuals teaching who have no college degrees, who have no educational background other than they went to school for some period of time. The principal has a college degree. He graduated from a Catholic university, I believe, with a degree in education. And he and I sat down with the assistant principal, and we talked about their goals and ambitions. And I'll discuss that in a moment. Um, but he is the only truly qualified being defined as a degree bearing educator in the school. Uh, the students are they're kids. They're students. They're youngsters. Some of them are highly motivated. Some of them aren't. I did have an opportunity to work with a couple of their special ed students. One little boy was in an inclusive setting where the language is English. All instruction takes place in English. And I went into a class where they were teaching French, which makes sense since French is a national language. They also teach that. And this little boy was sitting at the back of the room, isolated, basically ignored, doing whatever he wanted to do because they were carrying on with whatever they were doing. And so I sat down next to him and I had my iPad. And I pulled up in my iPad and I pulled up one of my educational apps where you can write your name and trace things. And so he and I started working on the iPad. He took to it instantly. Um, he after a demonstration or two, he was familiar with it. He was willing to engage with it. He was able to do the activities. He was eager to do the activities. He was eager to take part. And so the isolation um, in the back of the room, you know, wasn't wasn't, in my opinion, an appropriate thing. Maybe it was a ease of teaching, a feasibility thing. It was just easier to isolate, but it is a concern, and it certainly does raise issues about how much instruction the teachers receive as to classroom management, as to behavior management, as to simply working with students. Um, where to start? Uh, I gave I was able to give workshops on the last day I was there, the Saturday that I was there. Um, I did a workshop for the parents. I did a workshop for the teachers. Um, and the afternoon before, well, Friday afternoon, I was able to do a little workshop for their kids, and we talked about math and numbers and things like that. Um, and we talked about physical activity and how that fits in and what numbers can do with physical activity and vice versa. And so it was just kind of a chance for me to get to know children and see what they could do and see how they would respond. And they were extremely motivated. They were willing to respond. They were positive. They were interactive. It was a great experience in my mind. With the parents and the teachers on on Saturday, the teachers were a little quiet at first, and we had to have several um, interpreters because some of the aides were French speaking only, um, and so there was some interpreting going on, uh, which was an experience. Say two lines, interpretation. Say two lines, interpretation, and so that was kind of a pausing thing. Um, but we got through the presentation pretty well. There were some good questions. They were involved. They were interested. we came up with a, what do you want, a list, a priority of a priority list. If you could have anything, what would you have, and in what order would you have it? Um, and number one on their list was an assessment system. They have no system by which they formally assess children. IEPs are developed for the children that need IEPs, simply based upon what parents report. Parents say this child has this. Okay, fine. We'll write that into the IEP. Uh, Teachers don't have anything to base their educational objectives, their educational goals for a child on at all. Uh, at all. I was going to say other than working with them, but when they start working with them, they're literally flying by the seat of their pants. Um, and so clearly they need an assessment system. And it needs to be an assessment system that is user friendly because they don't have the resources to buy um, expensive assessments. They don't have the resources to buy a lot of equipment intensive assessments. And so that is a project we're currently working on, is to develop an assessment system that they can use that will yield legitimate information for them, but also useful information for them, and information that they will keep, and they'll be able to track the kids as the children progress kindergarten through sixth grade. Um, they would like an IEP format. They currently they have an IEP. They shared with me a copy of the young lady with autism's IEP. The the young lady whose parents I got to meet, and that was very vague. It had some of the basic elements of an IEP, but clearly it had been made up as a good attempt, but it was not a solid um, IEP model. And so I think that would be fairly easy to fix. Um, but I think the assessment system needs to come first. That's just an opinion. And so that's kind of the direction that we're working right now. Um, what do they have? Um, what do they do? Uh, it the slide that you're currently seeing, you see a picture of the youngsters sitting around a table. These were three young boys that were in the special education class. They're engaging in self-help skills, watching a little video player that's playing a DVD. And the teacher is kind of off to the side. He's not interacting with them because I was there observing, and I think he was a little intimidated. But they watched the video. They seem to be familiar with watching videos, and it may or may not be the predominant teaching methodology, but I can say they were familiar with paying attention to the video, following along when it stopped. Somebody would get up and change the video, and so they knew the protocol. It was something that they obviously had experienced before. Um, of these children, they were all verbal. Um, there were some behaviors. I was able to observe them during lunch, and there were some little boy naughtiness, but nothing that was huge and overt. Um, I did notice that I got to watch some of the children at kind of a recess Friday afternoon, physical activity, show, uh, practice, workout, musical, dance kind of thing. Um, and they were very familiar with routine. They were very familiar with communication. They knew who to listen to. They knew how to behave. They knew how to, and so there's clearly a well-established structure at the school. Um, Also, I noticed in the picture I've got beneath the little boys in the class with the video device. Um, if you look close enough, you can see that um, some of the writing is in French. which was kind of contra, kind of kind of opposed to the statement that I was told that everything takes place in English, but they may have students that just haven't progressed far enough that they understand English, um, and so maybe they're teaching in both languages to put a positive spin on it. Um, but their their biggest needs, anything technology, anything in terms of teaching methodologies, anything in terms of classroom resources. Um, they literally have nothing more than what you see in this one picture. They have desk tables and maybe a couple of books, and so they're it's wide open into what they could use. Um, Going forward, and here you're seeing a picture of the front of the school, the playground, if you will. Um, and so they do have some resources. I was, obviously teaching in the United States. To see a trampoline without a net, took my breath away. But the kids were on it. They knew what to do on it. They knew how to behave, and so obviously they were familiar with it. They had climbing equipment, and so there is an attempt to give them some physical activity. But other than the dance activity, the dance routine, I saw no instruction taking place at all in physical activity or physical education. The uniforms that you see the kids wear on Friday, and it is their soccer uniforms. Apparently, they all play soccer in the neighborhoods, and so this is the soccer outfit they wear, and they're allowed to wear it to school. Otherwise, they're in a school uniform. Um, Going forward, we're kind of stymied right now because of COVID. We're stymied a little bit with language. The school speaks English, the people at the school speak English, but the community is either French speaking or some of dialect or one of the dialects of Cameroon, of which there are many, many. And so individuals going over to work in this environment um, would be best served if they were able to communicate in French and English, which I was not able to do. I'm simply speaking English. Um, Another consideration is simply the distance. It took most of forever and a day to get from Arkansas to Cameroon, and and that that's just the way it is. Um, and then to move around within the city, I was able to stay in an apartment that the school has just down the street. Um, But if there were to be a larger group of individuals go over there, they might have to be more spread out, and travel in that area of a city of 2 million people is difficult. It's an active place. It's difficult to get around. And so that certainly would impact any effort to send people over to work with the school. Um, and then the time, um, time is probably a factor. I think the best approach for working with this school, and it's something that we're working on, um, is simply distance learning, is setting up webcasts and conducting mini lessons for the faculty, mini lessons for the students. Uh, the difficulty with this is the infrastructure. The electricity is well known to brown out from time to time, and so you lose the link, you lose the computers, and everything just kind of goes down. So it's not without some hitches, but it is doable, and that's kind of the approach that we're taking with it. They have had other universities come in and do workshops, but they're 1 and 2 day events, and then they're gone. And what we're hoping for is something longer term than that, where we can have students over there for a week, bring them back, send more students. but right now, obviously with COVID doing what it's doing, it's not a feasible idea. Um, the purpose of this presentation was to raise awareness of a, a program that we've started, we've investigated, we've initiated um, to work with individuals with and without disabilities in a private school in Douala, Cameroon. It's to put the idea out there. It's to put the project out there in front of other professionals that have ideas, that have experiences, that have resources, that may know a way that we can do a better job of reaching out to this school. And that's the reason for presenting this. Um, and so we invite comments, we invite ideas, we invite critiques, we invite anything that could help us move forward on this project. Um, my contact information is provided. The main phone is our department phone, our main office phone, so somebody's always there to answer it. And you don't have to deal with my email, or I'm sorry, my voicemail. Um, but I invite you to provide feedback. I invite you to engage us with this and give us give us some comments. Give us any ideas you have. Uh, One of the reasons we did this program is that in Arkansas, we have some very rural schools. And so the skills that our students develop in a practicum going to Cameroon would be useful in some of our rural schools, some of our small schools. We still run some K-12 schools in Arkansas. The population is small enough in some areas that that does occur. It's the exception, but it does occur. Um, we're hoping that this relationship with the school develops um, because we want our students to have an understanding of the world. We have a lot of first generation students. We have a lot of students who have never been outside of Arkansas. And so to understand the world in which they are educating young children, we want them to truly experience the world. Uh, and that's some of the drive behind this project. I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to email.